providing equals money. Money equals shelter, equals food and sustenance. And if I don't provide those things, then I'm worth absolutely nothing. Men out there, if you're listening, you are so much more than that. Network like crazy. You never know who you're going to talk to. Treat people equally. Doesn't matter if they're the janitor or the CEO. Life is so incredibly short. If I truly, genuinely care for you, I'm going to tell you, because I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow.
Welcome to the Minds Unleashed show with your host, Eric. Join him on the journey where we explore transformative ideas, confront challenges, and discover new perspectives. Together, let's elevate the mindset and transform your personal and business success. So whether you're seeking motivation, practical advice, or a fresh perspective, you've come to the right place. Join Eric on the Minds Unleashed show, and let's dive in together to empower your mind and unleash freedom.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Minds Unleashed show. Join me on this pursuit to see what it takes to empower your mind and unleash freedom. If you get value out of this, please share this podcast with a friend, and don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. I truly appreciate it. Let's get into today's show. I'm so grateful to introduce you to today's guest, Scott Peachey. Scott is a data governance leader for Fortune 500 organizations, a YouTuber with over 7 years of experience within the consumer electronics space, and a men's mental health advocate. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey man, I'm excited to be here. I got to tell you, I've been looking forward to this one, even though I messaged you on the side, had to push this one a little bit. You know, life gets in the way, life finds a way, but we're here. I'm ready.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it. I want to take you back to a post that you wrote, and it had a sign on it. And that sign said, "You matter." And that sign was a reference to your best friend, Greg, who you said was watching over you from above. Can you talk us through that experience you've had with Greg back in 2019?
Yeah, actually, I will never forget kind of the time that I met Greg. Ironically enough, at the time of this recording, it is exactly one day after the 5-year anniversary of his death, actually. So shockingly enough, it is very, very fresh. And now I love talking about Greg. Him and I, we had a really interesting relationship. And it came to, being best friends. I actually didn't meet him until literally the day his oldest was born. I met Greg. Now, if you ask his wife, we met before that. I don't remember that. I kind of remember that, but I'm a guy and I have a terrible memory. So it's just something that we do. But I met Greg. I really remember meeting Greg. The day that his oldest was born, I was sitting on the stoop of his front porch with me and another guy named Country, who has the plainest name in the history of ever. He actually goes by Stats on my YouTube channel in our live show, but his real name is Andy Smith. Super boring name. So we call him Country because it's way better than just Andy or Andrew. And I met Greg and I was like, hey, how you doing? This, that, and the other. And we immediately hit it off. And I remember looking at him and going, yeah, what are you guys getting into tonight? He's like, my wife's in labor. I was like, what? Your wife's what? She's in labor. I'm like, should you go to the hospital? Typically when people are going through labor, you go to the hospital like, yeah, we'll get around to it. That's kind of what Greg was like. He was just very like, man, we'll get to it. We got this. No big deal. And immediately Greg and I bonded, like just hit it off instantaneously. We had something called Man Meeting Mondays where me, Country, and Greg would get together, usually at Greg's house because he had a big whiteboard on the wall. And we would come up with the craziest ideas to try to come up with a business. Like we all hated working, like not the jobs, just working in general. And just couldn't stand it. And so we would have Man Meeting Monday, which really just gave us an excuse to sit and talk with each other and come up with the dumbest ideas. We almost bought a beauty salon together. Interesting, right? Like 3 dudes have nothing to do with, have any idea how to do, a beauty salon, but we thought about doing that. We actually went to a bank and tried to get funding. We went pretty far down that path. And then we started the YouTube thing, right? We started the YouTube channel, which all started at a bet between the 3 of us. It was I'll bet you a-holes I can do this longer than you can for 30 days. So the bet was start the YouTube channel. You have, You have to upload at least 3 minutes unedited every day for 30 straight days. Now, those two jokers didn't make it very far. I did. And then I made a YouTube channel out of it. And then ultimately, we ended up combining forces and creating what is now, technically speaking, on YouTube. There was one episode where I ended the stream early, and that's really the birth of where the concept "you matter" came from, because it got political, right? The show had gotten political, and I didn't like it. It was just not something that we wanted to do. And I ended the stream, and he was like, "What in the F are you doing? Like, why did you do that?" And so him and I had like a real heart to heart meeting. And I had talked about, and we'll probably talk about it here, about mental health and things like that. Is I am always of the mindset that my mental health, my personal mental health, doesn't matter more than anybody else's. Everybody else will come first in my eyes. And then he looked at me and he said those words, "You matter." And I remember going, "Oh, Jesus, here we go." Like rolling my eyes and like, "Jesus Christ, would you just shut up? That's not what I was trying to get at." And like, that's the thing. That's where that "you matter" was born. And then, fast forward to April 10th of 19. That is the day that Greg passed away. And I'll know where I was. I remember, just like you would be for 9/11 or the Challenger disaster, I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what happened. I remember I could tell you what I was wearing. I remember all of it in incredibly vivid detail. And I would never change that. I don't want to forget him. The day before he died, he actually had just come back from a month-long paternity leave, because his youngest was just a month old, literally 1 month old when he passed away. So I've gotten a chance to see his 4 kids grow up, and he doesn't get that. And that really bums me out, because he doesn't have the ability to do that. His wife is incredible. She's raising 4 kids on her own. She's figuring it out. She is making her way to do it. But that April 10th was it was a blur. And even though it was 5 years ago, I remember everything, every tiny detail. I remember being at the hospital and holding my phone in my hand, trying to call people to tell people what was going on, shared friends that we had. And I could not stop shaking. Like I wasn't cold. Like you would normally see people shake because they're cold. I couldn't stop. It was just completely uncontrollable. Of course, there were a lot of tears, a lot of anger, anger, all of that. But he changed the lives of so many. We may not have been best friends for a long time. I still have friends that I've been friends with for decades, but the friendship burned so bright and so hot so quickly that it was like a star, exploding in space. It was just something that was so fast, and I'll never forget it. I have never forgotten him. And, I said it in an Instagram post the other day. It's been over 2.6 million minutes since I heard his voice and talked to him. And I think about him every day. It doesn't go away. You learn to carry the grief with you. It's just something that I do.
Wow. That's a lot to kind of digest there. There's a lot of different avenues I'd love to go, but I think the most important question I have for you, Scott, is like, what made this relationship like so much different than all the others? That it was so much better.
It was like a like-mindedness. There was a lot of similarities between him and I. Some of the way that we grew up in our childhood, just our mantras and our shared interest, right? Like it was just something. Like our wives became very good friends. Our children, till this day, my youngest, still calls his daughter every day on FaceTime. There were so many intertwined, bits and bytes of what our whole families were like. We were like brothers that didn't know that we were brothers, right? Like he has family. He has a brother and a sister, and I don't have any brothers. But he immediately became one of those. Like families loved him. He was hysterical. Like, him and I would be the goofiest together. It was we got to be who we were meant to be in front of each other. Like, you meet those friends, you're like, oh, cool, I don't know if I can trust this a-hole. Like, it wasn't like that. It was just something different. The vibes were so different between him and I. And we immediately bonded. And we talked every day, whether that be text message, whatever, literally talked every day, basically from the day that his oldest was born, 12 some years ago, something like that.
Yeah, that's really like that's a very nice like friendship to have, and I think sometimes it's very hard to also find friendships like that.
I think men are afraid to have friendships like that because you start to talk about things like, well, the relationship that we have, they'll be like, oh, does that mean like the two of you are in a relationship? And I'm like, no, you guys got to understand is like, that's not how this goes. It's not always one of those situations. You can absolutely, like, friendships are those relationships. There are times where you will cut a friend off like you do with just a regular relationship as well. Like, that's the thing people have to remember. I think men a lot of times are afraid to share their feelings because a lot of times we're told not to. We have to be tough. We're not allowed to share our feelings. How dare you be vulnerable? Men are afraid to be vulnerable because society tells them that they can't be. Well, you know what? F that. I'm going to be vulnerable. After Greg died, I tell people I love them all the time. Men, women, I don't care. I don't, because life is so incredibly short. If I truly, genuinely care for you, I'm going to tell you because I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. So I'm going to spend the time that I know that I'm alive telling you how much you matter. Tell me how much you care. Like, if I genuinely care and love you, I'm going to tell you. Will it make you uncomfortable? Probably. Sorry. Like, it's just, you need to know that you matter. You need to know that the things you do really impact those around you.
Yeah. And plus on top of that, like just telling somebody that you love them could honestly change their entire day. They could be
Dude, just
having
smiling at someone, you can
yeah.
change the course of their entire day. There was an article, some guy in San Francisco, before he jumped off the bridge, walked 4 hours through the city, and not one single person smiled, said hello, said anything. And from what I had heard, if that would have happened, I think he actually ended up surviving and saying something along the lines of like, if anybody would have said anything to me, I'd have stopped. What are we doing? Like, I just want to ask the question is like, I wake up every day to make a positive impact in one person's life every single day. That's my job. That is why I'm put on this earth. My job about data governance and my things I do on YouTube, that's just stuff that I do. My job, the reason I exist, is to make that positive impact. Okay, well, let's just try to go out and make a positive impact in everybody's life as much as I can. Be kind. Choose kindness. Choose, compassion. Don't be an ass.
Choose love.
Choose love, man.
That's it. All right, that wraps up the episode.
I was gonna say, right, and we're done. Congratulations. Make sure you do a 5-star review if you're watching on Apple Podcasts.
So I'd love to actually get more into your Man Meeting Mondays,
man.
and your ideas for businesses. What other ideas did you have? It's actually kind of interesting that how Greg helped to inspire you on your YouTube channel journey.
Well, that was competition, though. Like, that's the thing. It's like him and I were incredibly competitive with one another, and it was the whole purpose of why we started, other than the steak dinner, was, well, we want to be better at public speaking. I want to be better at speaking in front of large groups of people. I want to be better at speaking, in meetings. I want to be better speaking in front of a camera, because it's, as you probably are well aware, incredibly awkward and lonely when you first start. And there's people on the other end of that camera, but you just can't see them. So you have to kind of fake this interest and seeing people's excitement through a camera lens that you can't see. Like, that's weird. So him and I wanted to start and go down that route. And that's really what inspired the whole thing. But also I wanted to beat his ass in a competition because I'm very competitive like that. That's how we started it. Man Meeting Mondays started because, one, it gave us an excuse to get together because it was great. That was before like all of the kids started popping out. But then two, we wanted to try to genuinely make something and not work for a big corporation. There's positives and negatives in both. Corporations tend to give you stability. They tend to give you things like 401ks and healthcare. When you're independent and you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't get that. And so there's a trade-off with each, but Man Meeting Mondays, we tried to come up with, like, again, the craziest of ideas of what could we do to generate additional income to where we don't have to work. We thought about buying real estate. We thought about the beauty salon. We thought about making a marketing company because everybody wants to make videos, right? SEO, content, blogs. At the time, podcasts weren't as popular as they are now. Even thought about podcasts. Like, we thought about everything. And then that's when we started to get into the, what do we do a YouTube live thing? Like, what if we did that? What would that be like? And then that's kind of how things started. We even thought about doing like snowplow business, but that's seasonal and that kind of sucked. So it didn't really work, especially like in Ohio, it's not too bad, but it's not been snowing a lot here lately in the last few years.
Yeah, that's funny because, I feel like my friends and I have had similar interactions where we're constantly thinking of what other businesses, or, I went down the real estate rabbit hole. I went down the drop shipping rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
You go down the content rabbit hole or the agency rabbit hole, and there's just
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different rabbit holes that you can go down. But I think the one that's most important for the people listening to go down is the one that, like, genuinely you feel some sort of way towards, because you should chase not the money, because if you chase the
Oh
money,
God,
it's the worst thing.
don't do that. Look, I've chased money. I can tell you, I have chased the money. Is the money nice? Sure. I've gotten hella old. I've gotten much older, and life comes at you fast. Be careful what you wish for, because you might get that money, but there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of heartache and a lot of BS that you deal with when you get that money. So I would caution anybody, look, money is nice. Do not get me wrong. I like it. We all have to have it to survive anyway. There's got to be a balance, though. You've got to have a good balance between, the work itself, the balance you have in your life, and making that cash. You have to.
Yeah. When you were, doing this YouTube channel, do you think, I know that you don't currently do it now, do you think there's a point in your life that you would bring it back?
100%. So when Greg and I did it, we had one show the week before he passed, and then like the next day after he died, I did the show by myself in his basement. So there is an episode out there. I can't remember what the episode number is. There's an episode out there where it's the episode where it says it's for Greg. That particular episode I did by myself in his basement with a studio audience, because I felt that he deserved that and he needed that. There was a reoccurring joke between him and I. His wife had t-shirts made for us before he died because I can't say a certain word the right way. And it drove him insane. That word is nuclear. I say nuclear, it's nuclear, right? So people are now probably listening to this podcast going, oh, I never really noticed. That was the thing. Greg noticed it and gave me hell for it all the time because I spelled it nuclear, which is still not technically incorrect, but he would be like, that's not what you mean when you say it. And so we had t-shirts made that still say it to this very day. And we were going to wear it that next week, and then he passed away. And so that episode, I draped it over the chair, put a beer out because that's what he did. And then we talked about it. And then I made a roughly 3-minute montage of photos that I got from his family. Everybody was crying. Hell, I was crying. I barely held it together for the damn show. I was only on there for 30 minutes and I barely held it together. But I vowed after that I was going to take a break. I was like, I don't want to do this without him. And so I took a break, 6 months. And then I came back by myself. And then slowly started to transition what is now stats or country, because he was always there. Even when it was Greg and I, he was stats off screen. He would provide us facts and little factoids and things like that. And then he finally started to become ingrained into the show. And I've added another friend to the podcast a little bit, or the show, Scotty Boombox. He was on it for, some time. He was a mutual friend of Greg. And so it was individuals who were really close to us. I'm not sure that I could do the show without someone who knew him unless I try to do something completely different. And honestly, that's a lot of work, and I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, that's fair. So, did you have like two components to your YouTube page? One was like this live show, and then two was that like consumer electronics space.
Yeah.
What was that live show like? Like, what were you talking about? And then why did you do consumer electronics reviews?
Yeah, right there before before it hit the fan and he passed, it was a every week on usually on Sundays, which we decided was like terrible release. I don't know why we did that, but we would do a release on the weekends of either review. It could be anything: Wi-Fi systems, phones, AI applications, earbuds, you name it, whatever the consumer electronic was. So our goal was to push out more content, because more content equals more eyeballs, more subscribers, more views, more money. You get the gist. And so we would always do we called it edited content. That was the consumer electronics side. Polished, edited, looked great. We did that, on the weekends. And then the fun time was, basically the live shows. That was the purpose of, you know, what we were going to do to make the most fun out of it, I guess. So that was why we set it up the way that we did. But ultimately, we had a plan right at the very end and you can start to see it a couple times it came out. We were going to use the Gary V content model, where you start with a long form content, and then you break it down into like 3 or 4 bigger chunks, and then you take those chunks, you break them down into like 60-second reels, or at the time it was IGTV, which is now reels. So you had Instagram TV. This was before TikTok. That was the goal. So big, hour long, break it down into 20-minute chunks, break it down into 5-minute chunks, and then into 60-second chunks. And it worked. And I'll tell you, it does work. It's a lot of work though. Editing takes a lot of work, and it's expensive in some instances. You got to have the right machine to do it. So that's kind of why I got out of it. Just because the passion just isn't there anymore. Since his passing, it's just not the same. I thought I had it, but I don't.
That's fair. Outside of like the editing side, like, was there anything else that you maybe didn't enjoy doing?
The cost, holy Jesus, the cost. Like, I was a guy that would buy the thing. Like, so if it was headphones, I was buying it. If it was a phone, I was buying it. Until you got to a certain point. I did end up partnering with Google a couple times and got some devices sent to me. So that helped. But anything new from Samsung, anything new from Apple, all paid for. And my tax return did not look pretty, because I treated it like a business. And that business didn't make a damn bit of money. I can tell you that right now. There was a lot more out than coming in, for sure. Because I unfortunately had to rely on ad revenue. And YouTube ad revenue, can't really rely on it. For some reason, I just struggled to get, brand deals or anything like that, to where somebody would say like, yeah, I'm willing to pay you, $5,000 for 3 videos. I never got that. I don't think people realize how hard it is to make it on YouTube. It's not easy. These kids these days, like, I want to be a YouTuber. It's like, kid, that's not, I'd rather be a trash man.
Why do you think you struggled to get brand deals, or why do you think it's so hard for YouTube?
It's saturated to a certain extent. Everybody could get their views, but the problem is like there are a select group of individuals. Like, you got most brand deals back then at the time, 100,000, subscribers or more. The brands a lot of time would look at like the vanity metric of subscribers. Let's just be very clear. Subscriber numbers do not matter. View numbers matter. There are people who put out absolute bangers of videos that have like 50 subs. They blow the doors off of anybody with views, and they make money hand over fist with like 50 subs. Most of your subscribers on YouTube do not watch your content. They don't. 98% of my views came from people who are not subscribed to my content. That's not abnormal either, by the way. That's every person that I know with around 20,000 subscribers. That's the case. You get the MKBHDs of the world, Michael Fishers of the world. Like, yeah, they're probably closer to way more people watching from their subscriber. I bet you it's still not more than, it's definitely not close to 100%. I can tell you that right now.
I think the saturation can be there if you go down that rabbit hole. I think, if you're entering into the rabbit hole of whatever that niche is, you think that there's a saturation, but when you kind of pull yourself out and look at YouTube as a whole, I feel like there isn't that many, but it's definitely a challenge.
It's tough because it can be saturating, but the problem that you run into is, why should they click on your video, right? Why should they click on it? Do you have a good thumbnail? Do you have a good title? Do you have a good, like, the description and tags don't matter nearly as much. The thumbnail and the title matter a ton. But my question would be is, what allows YouTube to rank you above certain other individuals and then vice versa? What do they do? Because there's a lot of times, like, I would be ranked above huge YouTubers, and I have no idea how I did that because it's not repeatable. I don't know, like, unless you were like bleeding edge, right? Like first in something. I remember I put out a Pixel Buds video and I was like the first one that had the Pixel Buds. I was before all the big boys. The first hour, boom, I got like 25,000 views super quick on this video. And then the big boys dropped and I fell like a rock out of the sky. Like, I got maybe 50 views after that. Like, that's just the way that it goes. But I don't know what I did from what did I do from a titling and a thumbnail perspective that made YouTube go, yep, that's the number one spot on YouTube. I have no idea how I did that. I still don't know.
Yeah, that's the mystery that they got to keep, hidden from you in that algorithm.
But that's the thing about being on YouTube. That's what makes it hard to rely on anything and why you really should have those brand deals. But again, it's kind of a catch-22, chicken to the egg. You have the brand deals, but they want to see vanity metrics. So they want to see that your videos are going to perform. But if you don't know how to get your videos to the top of the page to get views to perform, what do? Then you get into the conundrum of, do you pay for views? No, you don't pay for views. That can be tracked.
So you did YouTube for just about 7 years. What kind of insights did you learn about yourself doing YouTube for that long?
I love talking. That's probably the best one to describe. It's like, I realized how passionate I can get in conversation, how passionate I can get around certain topics, how I enjoy interacting with other individuals, interacting not only in like the chat, being on podcasts, being on different live shows. Like, I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy the thought exercise of just talking to other individuals. That is a lot of fun to me. Unintended consequences. I got really good at business meetings. My ability to communicate quickly because of the live shows really did help me a lot in the business world, especially if you're talking at a conference, especially if you're in a meeting with a bunch of individuals you don't know. You have to think really quick on your feet in a business meeting. Well, when you are hosting a live show, and if it's anything like mine, I got a soundboard here, I got a camera there, I got my computer here, stats used to set over there, 2 microphones, monitoring the chat, also monitoring the stream health, also making sure that it actually went live on YouTube, all the while making sure that I have the chat over here to interact with stats, but also interact with the crowd. Like, you learn in a weird way, not multitasking, because that's not actually a thing, but switching contexts and maintaining sharpness. That is an unintended consequence of doing live shows on YouTube. And I've made almost 200 episodes live and been on dozens of other live shows as well. It makes you very sharp in business meetings, and not a lot catches you off guard because you've honed that skill, that muscle, and you can deploy it in different situations, which that's been very cool. Like, I'll be honest, that's the one thing I do miss, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my sharpness because of that.
Mm. Do you think you're going to do anything to ensure that you have that passion for conversation and talking? Like, are you seeking out being a podcasting guest? Are you seeking out doing your own podcasts that involve conversation and talking to other people?
Interesting that you bring that up. Shameless plug, because am I allowed to shameless plug?
Of course.
Okay. Shameless plug. Data with Peachey, which is on YouTube. Also, your favorite podcasting app, mostly Apple Podcasts. I talk about what I do effectively for a living, data governance. That's really where I talk about it. I do it in short, digestible chunks. I enjoy data. I love talking about it. It's something that I've done for a really long time. I like to share the wisdom that I think is wisdom. You take it or you leave it. Buyer beware, I suppose. And I try to do it in a way that's 15 minutes or less. I initially started 10 minutes or less, then I realized that I talk a lot. So 15 minutes or less in this. And that's what I'm trying to do, just impart the wisdom that I've learned over decades of being in the data space. So that's a podcast I started up on my own, mostly because I missed doing that. I've been guests on other ones. I was just on a webinar for AWS and Amuda, a couple days ago, talking about data again, but something a little bit different. And I enjoy. I'm not so much seeking out, I suppose, as much as if somebody wants to talk, I'm always open to listen or to chat. But I don't go out and say like, looking to be on podcast, hire me. I don't do that. I just, if we want to talk, we'll talk.
Why is it that you love the conversation and talking with people, but you're not seeking it out? Why do you think there's a gap there?
Maybe lifetime. Like it's just I may not know that they exist. They may not know that I exist. So like just the challenge of being found, I suppose. Also, to be fair, I don't actually think that I'm that interesting. So that's a whole other thing. But remember, we talked about this earlier. I don't matter nearly as much as everybody else does.
Yeah.
We're not going to get into that deep mental stuff. That's for my therapist.
Oh, we're going to get into that space.
Oh, boy. Okay, here we go. Lay it on me.
No, not yet.
Okay, we'll get there. You're making me cry later. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I don't want you to cry.
I can.
I want to go back to, you mentioned you have a podcast on data governance. For the people at home that, including myself, that have no fucking idea what data governance is, what is the explain like I'm 5 or explain to the mom at home what that is?
Data governance. The easiest way I can describe it is that you want to make the best, most sound decision with the information that you got. You don't want to make a bad decision based on some bullshit you know about, right? So that information is pieces of data. What data governance gives you the ability to do is trust the data that you are given will give you the best opportunity for you to make the best decision. You need good data to make good decisions. Data governance will set the framework and allow you to say, okay, I can trust this data to make my decisions. Now, what data goes into that input, that's where you have to flow into a governance framework and process. But at long story short, it gives you the ability to make the best decisions with the best data that you have at your fingertips, basically.
That's really helpful because it's a space that I think is, not talked about as much. And it's also
damn right it's not talked about. It's where all the cool kids are. Damn.
I guess if you maybe work with Scott, you might be with the cool kids, but
you're damn right you would be. And if you don't want to, I can tell you can get anybody can get in data governance. Look, data governance is basically nothing more than a study in human psychology. It is change management and process engineering. It is people, process, and technology. If you think technology is going to solve all your problems, I got news for you. It ain't going to do it. You got to bring the people along. You got to develop the processes for it. And then, and only then, do you use the technology to bring it all home.
Yeah. I'd love to pivot into, something you've kind of touched on lightly here of how, you think that other people around you are more important.
Man, you didn't even wait to it. We're 30 minutes in and you already went into it. Okay, go ahead.
And you're, very much, mental health is very important to you. So what areas in your life do you currently feel anxiety, stress, and discomfort in?
Yes. Every aspect of it, parenting, being a spouse, being a friend, being a brother, being a son. There's anxiety is just something that I deal with. Like I have something called generalized anxiety disorder. It's just something that I've dealt with for a long time. I take medicine for it. I talk to people for it. Much like you would be if you were doing physical therapy. I have what I deem as my mental health team. It's a couple individuals that I work with that manage, from a medicine kind of thing, as well as the therapy kind of thing. Like, it's important to talk about those things, because a lot of time, especially men, can get wrapped up in their head, and again, afraid to talk to somebody because, you come from the generation that I came from, and then the generations before, you didn't talk about your problems. You suppressed those things. You bottled them up and you stuffed them down your throat, because that's what you did. And men do that a lot. Men still do that, even though it's a little bit easier now to talk about it. But a lot of times men are just, they think they can't be vulnerable. They think that they don't matter more than anybody else. And then you see channels all the time on Instagram or whatever. It talks about, like, why can't men say the same things as this, that, and the other? That's just kind of, unfortunately, society a little bit. And so there's things that we have to, as a society, overcome. We're getting there. It's going to take some time. Generations. It will take generations.
Yeah. You mentioned you have, you kind of listed out everything that's almost on your plate from a day-to-day basis, from being a parent, a son, and a spouse. So what are you doing on, a reoccurring basis to kind of help yourself get to a place that's maybe a little bit more freeing from a mental health perspective?
So I think it's important to invest in yourself. Some people do the gym, right? So some people will go to the gym. Some people will play a sport. Some people will run. Some people will do this, that, and the other, right? It's important that you have something, whether that something be big or small or an hour long or 5 minutes long. Find something that you can ground yourself in. One of the best things that I've done, and I can hear the comments now in this podcast, because it's like being a CrossFitter. When you're a CrossFitter, all the thing you talk about is CrossFit. And same concept with cold plunging. Like, if you cold plunge, can you not talk about cold plunging? I have cold plunged 108 days straight. It is one of the best things that I ever did. But at face value, what is it? It is nothing more than guided meditation. Now, that guided meditation for me is, damn, this is cold water. Like, it's real cold. And so I concentrate on two things and two things only. One, surviving, which means breathing. And two, whatever song of the day that I chose to put in my ears. In that 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, that is the only thing I think about. From a meditation perspective, it's the same concept, right? Like, you meditate to try to take your mind off of the reality in front of you. I do that through putting my big ass in a cold plunge. That's what I do. And that's been one of the best things for me. Some people go on walks. Some people read a book. Some people choose to sit outside and listen to birds. Find time to ground yourself in something where you can take your mind off the reality of everything. That is one of the best things that I've done in the last 3 months or so, because it's helped a lot.
You remind me of that guy that's on TikTok where he's cold plunged. I think he did 365 days, but he's over
Jordan
like
Ferrone.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to get to a point where maybe you start doing your cold plunges and have some sort of, talk? I know you mentioned talking and posting.
Probably not, because I genuinely enjoy it for me. I know why he does it. I watch his videos every day on Instagram. Literally every day. He's like at 445 days in a row or something like that. I watch him and I find value in what he says. However, that 5 minutes, that when I get in the tub, 3 to 5 minutes, and then 3 to 5 minutes to towel off and get clothes on and go about my day, that time is my time. I don't want to give it to anybody else right now. Maybe in the future I might share it, but I specifically carved out that time for me and me only. Nobody messes with me. My kids don't mess with me. My wife doesn't mess with me. That time is mine. And it's been one of the best things. Like, it's not a lot. It really doesn't take me a lot. Like, I don't need a lot of attention when it comes to that type of stuff, but I want that time for me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how you mentioned that the cold plunge is your form of guided meditation, and you mentioned how you'll go on a walk. So for me, I think going for walks is my kind of like, if I'm having, if the day is going bad, or maybe you're like in like that blah state, going for a walk, regardless of the speed, and it's a sunny day out is, I've said it before, it's a 10x mood change. You got to find that thing that does that for you, but also have the self-reflection in yourself and awareness in yourself to know that that thing is the thing that helps you.
Yeah. And then literally be selfish with it. Be selfish with the thing. If it's cold plunge, cool. If it's walking, cool. Maybe it's swimming. Maybe you go in and you do, like, I want to do 5 laps. Cool. Make it about you. Just make it about you. That's it. That's all you got to do.
I also found it interesting how you said that listening to that one song in the cold plunge is, again, your guided meditation. But I would say meditation for me is more sitting in silence and just allowing any thought that comes to mind to enter and go down that rabbit hole. Because I think in today's world that people don't actually, one, sit in silence. I mean, you know, I'm guilty of it too. I'm the iPad kid when I'm eating lunch, right? Or I'm watching a TikTok or a YouTube video and sitting there for, call it 10, 15, 20, some people are up to 30 minutes, on a timer. And
you could do 30 minutes where you don't, oh God, that sounds miserable to me.
I do 15 minutes. I actually do 15-minute meditations before every podcast where I kind of get my thoughts on, see where I'm at.
Look at you. I like you doing big things over there. I tell you what, man, like I can't do it because being in silence is so uncomfortable for me. So uncomfortable, which is why I do the music. I tried to do like listening to a book. And man, it's not my thing. I just can't. Like I gotta have the music. So there's a guided meditation from a guy named Alan Watts. I tried that and it's just noise. And it allows my brain to just concentrate on the noise. But every once in a while I'd have an intrusive thought come in and I would think the thought and then I'd be like, yep, I thought the thought. Now it's going to go out of the way. And I try to ground myself. But I found that the actual cold temperature for me was that sensation that I needed to stop. And so that's why I did it.
Yeah. I think you should try a 15, just call it 5 or 10 minutes. Just sit in silence and whatever comes to mind, let it happen. I use guided. I don't use talking meditation. I just use like the Spotify meditation playlist or whatever that's out there.
Okay.
Use that, and any thoughts that you have, just write them down, right? I have like a Google Doc of all of my thoughts and notes because my best friend got tired of listening to me. He's like, dude, you just need to write down all these into a Google Doc. So I have like 5 or 6 years of all my thoughts in one Google Doc. Yeah.
Good for you. That's impressive, dude. That is super impressive. I don't know if I could do 5 or 6 minutes in silence, let alone taking the time to type. Use voice to type, I would assume, right?
No, I would write it out. Usually it's at like the gym when I'm working out. Yep. It's usually on my phone. Anything that would come to mind. I have
a lot of voice notes.
Voice notes are fine. I would definitely challenge yourself to do that. Maybe you'll help kind of uncover some things about yourself, right? Because the point is that you find the areas where there is that anxiety or stress or discomfort, and then you want to think to yourself, like, why? Why do I feel that way? Or why do I feel that feeling? And then just allowing it to happen is a greater impact on the rest of your life than like those few uncomfortable minutes.
Whew. Again, I'll give it look for you. I'll give it a shot. Like I'm going to tell you right now, but that sitting in silence. Oh, my therapist gets on me. She's like, you got to sit. And I was like, oh, so uncomfortable. No. It sounds awful.
Why is it so uncomfortable for you?
The sitting in the silence and letting my thoughts just become like, just come to me. My brain goes constantly 1,000 miles an hour all the time, never sleeps. And the idea of just basically going, all right, cool. You're going to let that engine and that car loose and you're going to let it go 4,000 miles an hour for 5 minutes straight. I can wreck myself in 4 or 5 minutes. I'm already hard on myself. I don't need 5 minutes where I just openly bash the piss out of myself. So that's the hard part. We're working on it though. The therapist and I were working on it. We're good.
Yeah. I guess I understand that it is very easy to kind of just be like, oh, I'm not doing as good of a job in this or that, or,
we're our own worst critics. Like I'm one of the harshest critics of myself. That's like when I tell my kids, like when especially my oldest, when she gets mad, I was like, there's nothing that you could possibly say that is nearly as mean as the thing I've probably told myself this morning. So you might as well say it, because I assure you, whatever you're going to say is not nearly as bad as what I've told myself that I am this morning.
Yeah. And I think maybe you could do an exercise where you are trying to be, silent. And I think, even if you're listening to this at home, right, and you are struggling with a very similar thing where, it's fucking hard to sit in silence and like not touch a phone or have background noise going and let your thoughts come to you. But, I guess maybe some people are perhaps afraid at first to go down into those dark areas. And so if those do happen, what's the thing that can kind of pull you out of it a little bit? So for you, it sounds like it could be that cold plunge. So maybe if you do hit that dark spot where you're like, oh shit, I'm scared, or I don't like where this is going, maybe you just go do the cold plunge quick, and that's your way.
Usually why I do it.
That's your way of grounding yourself.
Yep, that's how I do it. And I was gonna say, if you are listening to this and you have very similar feelings of me, where I'm like, holy shit, I don't want to do that, you're not alone. You're literally listening to some jackwagon with a big haircut tell you the exact same thing, that you are not alone, and it is very much sucky. So I'm right there with you. We can try it together. Just know that I'm trying. If you listen to this, I've probably already tried it.
That's good. What other areas, so like you struggle to sit in silence, like what else would be like the next thing that you struggle with from like a mental health perspective?
So sitting in silence is hard because I just don't like the silence. Probably giving myself credit for anything. I'm always going to tell others individually. Like I think we as a society, I think just in general, a lot of people, there are way more people who don't give themselves nearly the amount of credit as they should. There are always going to be people who are like, I'm the best. Look at me, how amazing I am. There's always going to be those individuals that are just not humble, right? They're just the way that they are. But I think there's a lot of individuals, myself included, that don't give ourselves, we try to maintain like humility almost to a detriment. And I think a lot of times we should give ourselves a little more credit for the things that we've done or are doing or dealing with, because life is hard. And give yourself the credit for being kick-ass. Give yourself the credit for the things that you would definitely give others credit for, but you don't, because you're your own worst critic. How many times have we told ourselves, man, it's okay. You made a mistake. It's not a big deal. It's all right, man. You got this. But if you made that mistake, you call yourself, you the biggest dumbass ever. I can't believe you made that mistake. How stupid of you. Again, we're so mean to ourselves. Give yourself grace, just like you would give anybody else. But you got to have the ability to step back and realize that, yeah, you got to give yourself grace, because, look, you got to be kind to yourself. You have to.
Yeah. And I think if Greg has been watching over you for the last 5 years, he'd be giving you a lot of grace right now.
Well, I would certainly hope so. Shit, we've been through a lot. If he's watching over me, I'm going to need him to start sending me some lotto numbers too. I'm going to need you to come up off my lotto numbers, buddy. Man meeting Monday, come up off those lotto numbers. Hit your boy with them numbers so I don't have to work anymore. That'd be nice.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely something I struggle with too, is you don't give yourself enough credit for the things you are doing or what you are going through. And, I think for me personally, like getting complimented was still something I struggle with. Like I never know how to react to it. And sometimes people will be like, oh, Eric, you're doing such a great job. And be like, thanks. Like, and let me give you a little bit of advice on that. Cause somebody hit me with this. I'll never forget it. Her name is Amanda. She's one of the best human beings I've ever met. She hit me with something that made me go, oh shit, I never even thought about it that way. Let's say that, Eric, I compliment you, man, you're doing awesome. I will actually compliment you. Like, you're making a kick-ass podcast, and I know that you've been really putting through with it. Like, you've upgraded your equipment. You really spend the time to make this thing sing. So I am actually being legitimate when I say this. Like, you're doing a bang up job. Now, that's the perfect response.
you probably don't want to say that, because you probably want to say things like, man, it's all right. It's no big deal. I'm just doing my thing. Like, but it does. And what I would say is, when somebody compliments you, because I used to do this all the time, when somebody would compliment me, I'd be like, no, it's okay. This person's really more awesome than I am. It can be interpreted that you're diminishing the person giving you the compliment and their feelings. And when Amanda told me that, I was like, but that's not what I mean. She's like, that may not be what you mean, but some people can actually interpret it like that. So the easiest way is, when you get complimented, just say thank you. That's it.
Yeah, I never actually had that response of like, oh no, this person's better. I usually just defaulted to like, thank you, like I appreciate it, because like I guess I just didn't know what else to say.
You did it right. Yeah.
I could see what you mean when you said, you know, like, oh no, this person's better, and how that can be perceived in a way that, you know, doesn't support or, you know, reassure that person giving you the compliment. So I could definitely understand that.
Yeah, it's really awkward when that happened. I was like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. And then I was really hard on myself for like 3 weeks after that. I woke up in the mirror and I was poking myself. I was like, oh, you're such an idiot. I'm kidding. I didn't do that.
I hope not. Maybe something that might help your negative self-talk is positive affirmation journaling. Have you ever done that before?
I've tried. I have terrible handwriting, so my positive affirmation journaling ended up just squiggles. So I tried. I have awful handwriting. That's why I started to do the audio messages. And I wouldn't say things like, hey, Scott, you're doing a great job. I would be like, all right, that seemed to work. Let's try this next thing. It was always on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it's like indirectly giving myself, like, I didn't call myself a piece of shit. So that must mean that I must have done a good job.
Right. I want to understand more, like, how is your mindset, you know, shifted since you've, you know, started seeing like a therapist? Like, how is your approach to different situations changed?
It allows me to reflect with some. It was always like before, it was always my fault, right? Like, whatever the situation was, it was my fault. And then I didn't necessarily know how to get out of that spin with the constantly, you know, speaking with a therapist, speaking with, you know, a counselor, or anything you want to call it, let you call it. It gave me a perspective that I didn't necessarily think of, because I wasn't talking to anybody, right? I was only ever talking within my own brain. And sometimes it's really helpful to have that outside party give you perspective that you wouldn't have thought about, not because you're not smart enough. It's just because you're in your own brain. You're going to think about it your own way. And having that therapist gave me the ability to step back and go, well, how else could I think of this? It made me shift my mindset into, you know, obviously this was over a prolonged period of time, where I would say, you know, what would this person say? What would my therapist say if I told her about this situation? And it empowered me to be able to think about problems, situations, scenarios differently. It allowed me to stay in the moment, because boy, I am like the king of what ifs. Like, there is no bigger crown to wear than the what if crown that I have. It is massive. I will what if a situation to absolute pulp. That's what I do. And she has helped me get out of that. It's not a what if. Nope. That's not, you don't know if that's going to happen. You got to stay in the moment. What's happening right now? Not a what if this happens. You will respond to whatever happens when and if it occurs. And I've been going through that a lot.
I think that's where, you know, that anxiety, right, that you mentioned previously came from, you know, and what ifing it is a very common thing to do. It's interesting in a way that, you know, you're like, oh, well, what if this, what if that, what if this, what if that? And like, you can see how like the rabbit hole happens. And I think I remember I heard someone say one time of like, the stress and anxiety you put yourself through a situation, like you've relived that scenario like 5 times, you know,
100 times. Yeah,
instead of
absolutely.
just living through it.
Oh yeah, dude. I just what if everything. I used to what if literally even the most inconsequential things. What if my kids don't like this dinner? Well, then they're not going to like me as a father. Then I'm a terrible father. Then they're never going to talk to me again. Then my wife's going to divorce me. You can literally just wind yourself. I could wind myself up with the dumbest shit. I was really good at it.
You're gonna wind yourself up right now. So we're gonna.
Oh hell no! I've gone through. I was going to say I've done a lot of therapy. I'm good now. I don't care if my kids like me. I'm kidding.
We're gonna cut that part.
I don't care. You can leave it in. I don't care.
So what was like that moment like when you were thinking to yourself where you're like, I'm in a place where I actually need to like seek out somebody else to kind of help me out with my own space?
It was a while ago. Like, so I bet you I have seen my therapist. Hold on. I got to go back from career's perspective. Let me look back a little bit. Over a decade. So I was in my 20s when I started talking to my current therapist. And so at the time it was more associated, like when I first started to see her, it was mostly associated with, I was the quintessential early or late 20s guy where I was driven by all career and I'm going to be a career man and I'm going to be in the C-suite and all this other bullshit that doesn't actually matter. I basically was identifying my sense of worth through my job. And by the way, it absolutely sucked because I've been laid off 3 times in my career, and kind of the realization of the companies really don't. There are companies that say that they care for you, and then there are some that don't. You have to remember it is a business at the end of the day, and they're going to do whatever is best to keep their business afloat. And if that means they got to let you go, unfortunately, that's the part of business. That's why, especially here in Ohio, being an at-will state, you as a worker, if you want to get up and leave, you can. And they also can make that same choice of letting you go when they can and they want. And so that's really how it started. Was I had really defined myself through my career. And that's where that's when I got to the low point. That's when I was like, I've got to do something because, people were telling me like, you're so much bigger than just your job. And I'm like, yeah, but my sense of worth, like I'm not providing, I'm not making money, I'm not doing these things. A lot of men today deal with. If I'm not providing, then what good am I? Men are only thinking about it mostly. Providing equals money. Money equals shelter, equals food and sustenance. And if I don't provide those things, then I'm worth absolutely nothing. But actually, men out there, if you're listening, you are so much more than that. You just don't give yourself credit for nearly as much stuff as you think you do. And that you actually do. You're bigger than a provider. If you're a spouse, you're a spouse, a friend, a best friend, a confidant, somebody you spend time with intimately. If you have friends, you have all of those friends. You're probably somebody that they look forward to speaking to. If you have kids, same concept. The kids don't give a rip how much money you make. Well, some do, but the wide majority of the little kids don't. They don't care. You are their human jungle gym a lot of times. You are something that's paying attention to them. Guess what? They don't care that you had a Teams meeting. They don't care that you took the trash out. They don't care that you dig a ditch. They care that you're there.
Yeah. Wow.
That was deep, wasn't it? That was a deep one.
That was good. I liked it. Why do you think your identity was so wrapped up in your career, and like who told you that message?
I knew it. Like this through some like self-realization. I knew it because I was literally just defining myself with. I told myself, because again, rabbit hole king of what if crown that I wear. That if I don't have a job, or I don't have a job that makes enough money, or if I don't make enough money for this, that, and the other, then I'm a big piece of shit. I'm worthless because I can't provide the way that I should. That probably means that my spouse is going to leave me. My kids are going to hate me. I'm going to lose my house, lose my car. I'm going to be homeless, or I'm going to have to move back home. And how big of a piece of shit is a late 20 something moving back home? It's like all of these things that you just try to, like, men will just tell themselves. I was falling right into the trap, right into it, man. Just head over heels, assholes over ankles, right into the hole. That was what I was doing. Like, and it's hard to overcome that because men or people in general do not give themselves credit for all of the things that they do in fact do. They a lot of times do so much more, but they only identify with the thing that they're generating, in this instance income, as their sole purpose. I was put on this earth to just make money and then I'm going to die. But it's so much more than that.
Yeah. Like, what advice would you give to somebody to like help them, kind of get out of that like rabbit hole? Because I felt a similar way when I was laid off and impacted by that. And you realized how much like your sense of identity is wrapped up into your job or how much you make. And, I think you almost have to like remove yourself from that, and kind of accept where you're at from a career perspective.
Well, there's societal norms that I think is hard to overcome too, right? Like society in general likes people who make a lot of money. You got a lot of stuff. Cool, you got the latest iPhone. Cool, you got the latest shoes. Cool, you got a big ass house. You got a mansion and Benzes and giving ends to your friends and it feels stupendous, right? Like that's a lot of time. That's where society rewards that. And so you seek that out because that's society as a whole says that's what you should be doing. So you downplay some other things that actually matter. Time spent with family, time spent with friends. Time is the commodity you can't get back. You can make money. You can make money. DoorDash, OnlyFans. You can make money. You can. Like, that's the thing. Like, you can make that money, but you can't get time back. And so I really would challenge individuals to say is think about it from the time perspective. Think about the impacts you're making with the time, not the money.
I also think your health is another one, probably, right up next to time, because if you don't take care of your health, then time is almost irrelevant, in that regard.
Yeah, I had a boss one time, I'll never forget it. He said there's three things in life: family, career, and your health. Right? There's three things. You can only ever have two at the same time. Can't have all three at the same time. You can only ever have two at the same time. So think about it. Sometimes you make choices, right? Like maybe in your 20s, you focus on career. You let your health take a dive. Or you're in your 20s and you choose not to, maybe enter into a relationship. Okay. Maybe you get in your 30s and you got a good, steady career. You don't really feel like climbing the career ladder. You work on your health and your family. Cool. But what's not happening? You're not climbing the career ladder. But that's okay. You get into your 40s. Maybe it's like I want to climb the ladder a little bit more, or maybe I just want to concentrate on my health. Like, yeah, like it's just one of those things. Like, think about it. Health, family, career. You can only ever have two at the same time.
I would challenge also those people to probably try to disagree with that, because I think if you show up for yourself in a health perspective, I'm a huge health person, with like working out, going to the gym, sports, all that stuff. But I think if I do that for myself, then I show up as a better worker, or I show up better in my friendships or relationships. That's kind of like your cold plunge, example, right? Where you're like, this is the 3 to 5 minutes that I want for myself. And if I don't get that, then today's a little off, or today might feel a little strange, and you use that time unbothered. And that's kind of, finding what that is. So I think the physical health can help you show up as a foundation item for your family, for your career.
Think about it though. I like that you're challenging back. I like this. It's probably not a hard and fast rule the way I made it sound, so that's fair. But what I'd say is like a lot of times, again, from a societal perspective, how do you get the promotions? You burn that candle at both ends. Well, if you burn the candle at both ends, what do you not have time for? There's only 24 hours in a day. If you're going to put 12 hours at an office and you're going to try to sleep for 6, you got 6 hours left. You're going to fill in family, friends, and health in 6 hours. When do you get any time? When do you need to get any downtime? When do you just get time to just to veg? When time to just think?
Time to just sit in silence.
If you'd like that weird way, yeah, sure, you can do that too. Whatever you want. Like, it's one of those things. Like, again, A lot of times you burn and you grind and you grind and you grind, but something has to give because there's only so many hours in the day. And so I come back to the use time because you ain't getting it back. Use it as the most precious commodity as you got. And where you use that time, is that really where you should be spending it? Is that really where that is the best usage of that most precious commodity?
I don't disagree, but I think the one piece that society pushed is like, oh, in order to get a promotion, like, why do you have to work 12 hours? Why can't people set up boundaries for themselves of like, these are my working hours, after this hour, I'm not available. And if it's truly urgent, here's my cell phone number.
The answer is fear. Like, if they're afraid if they don't do that, they're not going to get a job. Job market's been ridiculously hard. If I don't make myself available, then I may not get the job. If I don't get the job, then I'm a piece of shit because I don't have a job. You see what I mean? It rolls, like it can roll right with it.
Yeah, you're just gonna what if yourself to a very negative.
What if
mental
King here, baby? What if King?
You mentioned how you went through 3 layoffs. You've been a senior leader, in Fortune 500 companies. What advice, and you had an identity crisis with your career. It honestly made you to a point where you're at rock bottom and you went to therapy. What advice would you give people that are in college, 1 or 2 years out of college, that are in getting ready to enter corporate America or very early on in corporate America?
Seek a mentor and multiple mentors, individuals that are not like you, individuals that that would not be afraid to tell you how things are or things you should do. Find individuals that are not yes men or yes women, individuals that are going to tell you no and make you earn it, because they're going to be the ones that really truly help you evolve into the best version of yourself. Don't be afraid to go ask that senior leader for coffee and pick their brain how they got there. Everywhere in between. I have no qualm. I have no shame. I will email anybody and I don't care, including the newest, the company that I'm at now. I have emailed the CEO because I genuinely want to pick that person's brain. How did you get where you are? Matter of fact, one of the companies that my parents worked for, I said, hey, I would really like to have dinner with the CEO because I really like what he's done. Can I pick his brain? So I called the administrative assistant. I called the zero, basically. I dialed their home office number and I said, hi, I'm this person. I would really like to schedule time with the CEO. They're like, what's the purpose? I go, literally just to pick their brain. What's the worst thing they're going to tell you? No, not going to kill you. Can't kill you. Guess what happened? I had dinner with the person. I learned a lot. I networked in the industry. I picked up a person I could talk to, and it works. Network like crazy. You never know who you're going to talk to. Treat people equally. Doesn't matter if they're the janitor or the CEO. Be kind to everyone. No one is better than you. No one. I always say it, like, even the most senior people, they put their pants on the same way that I do. They just may wear more expensive pants.
That's true. At the end of the day, right, we're all human beings.
That's all we are, human beings.
So how did you not have anxiety to like email the CEO, but you'll have these what if thoughts on, did my kids like dinner tonight?
I have nothing to lose when it comes to from a career perspective because I've been laid off 3 times, right? So like, I used to not be like this. I would be scared to death to email somebody like that because I'd be like, this person's going to think I'm an idiot. They're going to fire me and then I'm going to be out of a job. Again, fear-based. But I now know what it feels like to lose a job. I now know what it's like to try to overcome that, which means I know I have tools in the toolbox to help me overcome that. So I set myself up for that. And that's one of the biggest ways that I was able to get over the anxiety of emailing a superior. But that took time. Like that took a lot of time and life experience. It is not going to come natural. Some people do, most people don't. It's not a thing that comes natural. It does for me now because I am where I am due to the experience that I've had. And in terms of the kids part, like I love my kids to death. I would do anything for my kids. I don't want my kids to be sad ever. So even if it comes down to the silliest of things with dinner, I always want my kids to like me because I love my kids.
Yeah. How do you plan to take the fear that you don't have in your career and put it into your personal life with those what if anxious thoughts and scenarios?
That's what therapy's for. That's why I'm in it now, is to kind of help me through all of that. I mean, obviously, when I went through what I went through with the career stuff, a decade ago or so, that was the impending burning platform at the time. And then I look back and go, man, that was really stupid. Why did I get so caught up in the job thing? But again, experiences put certain things into perspective. You fast forward, to from then to now, we lost Greg. So I lost my best friend. Last year I lost my father. It was a year ago, like just a week ago. It was a year ago. I lost my father to a heart attack, found him in his apartment. Like the things that you go through, the experiences that you get crafts the perspective of where the anxiousness and anxiety is directed to. And that again is one of those things that just comes with experience. There are people who are significantly younger than me who's gone through exceptionally tragic things. Just think about it from Greg's kids' perspective. Most of them were now to the age where two of them will barely remember him. One doesn't know him at all. That's tragic. Like that's going to shape his perspective on life for his entire life. And so that's where we go back to the be kind to individuals because you have no idea what they might be going through. The experiences that we have in life are going to shape who we are. For Christ's sake, just be nice. Just don't be a Karen. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, don't be that person. Like, don't yelling at a waitress. What is that going to do? They brought out your meal the wrong way. Okay. Either send it back or eat what you get. Like, there's just certain things I just want to be like, why are you acting so entitled? None of this matters. None of this matters. You're not going to have, I got a wrong enchilada written on your freaking gravestone. Who gives a shit? Have a little perspective.
Yeah. I think that stems probably from like just a lot of like built up like insecurities in people, or times where like they're just, so stressed out with their own lives that they almost like just take it out on other people. Unfortunately,
they do. It's unfortunate. And I'm not perfect at it. Like there are times where I'll have a rough day and I'll be like, maybe I'll snap at my kids or something, like, and I'll feel bad. And then I go apologize to them. Holy Jesus, how important is that? As parents, I never, like my growing up, my mom would never said it. She was wrong. Never said that. Mom, if you're listening, I mean every word of it. but that's the thing, is like with my kids, I'm like, if I make a mistake, I'm going to apologize to them, because that is a very important life skill that they need to learn. And it's my job to teach them that.
Yeah. Your parents admitting that they are wrong is probably I know, you had to literally like pull it from their teeth from like 20 feet away just to get like half an inch to move.
Yeah. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I want to go back to when, you said how therapy's helping you with that, and that like, you didn't really have almost like somebody to talk to. And it's very interesting you brought that up, because I was really talking to like my best friend about how men don't really have many emotionally vulnerable friends that they have had conversations with, and it almost sounds like that you didn't have them. And do you think today you've had more vulnerable conversations with some of your
100%
guy friends?
100%. Absolutely. But what's the reason? It's our experiences, right? We run in the same circles. They knew Greg too, right? Like if you just look at the Greg situation, you lean on the experience of that loss and you realize, and it changes you. And so that perspective comes in to where you can be more vulnerable. I also think it's very, very important to lead by the example of being vulnerable. I use this in my profession, and I know you know individuals who know me professionally as well. That vulnerability as a leader goes a long way with people on your team. Like that, it truly does. Like, look, leaders are not perfect. We are not perfect as managers, leaders, whatever you want to call us. And admitting that and showing that to the folks that are on, your individual team allows them to be more open, more vulnerable, and allows for greater flow of creativity because they're not afraid of doing something stupid in front of their boss because their boss is human too. And some of the best work, the best people I've ever worked with have the ability to be like, you know what, I may make a mistake, but I'm going to be brave because the vulnerability that my boss is showing from himself is allowing me to show that same level of vulnerability. Now it's going to take time. It's not one of those things that's just going to snap and happen overnight. But when you are vulnerable and you show mostly your true self, it helps even professionally. Now there's certain things you can't say professionally where you can't be overwhelmingly vulnerable and you still have to be professional, but that level of vulnerability as a leader goes a tremendously long way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, like, if you, as the subordinate in this case, right, see that your, manager in this instance is being vulnerable or opening up, then you feel like a sense of like relief almost to take on something as well as realize that it's okay to make a mistake. And I feel like so many people in the corporate world are very afraid of making a mistake or even honestly owning up to a mistake. Sometimes I make mistakes, we all do, right? And I'm like, the first thing I say is, yeah, I'm sorry, like that's my mistake. That's half the battle.
Yeah. If you have a leader that shows that they're vulnerable, shows that they apologize when they make a mistake and supports you, would you rather work for that person or would you rather work for a person who admits they never make mistakes, takes all the credit, and makes you do things that you may not necessarily think is the best way, but you feel that you can't argue with them because it's probably not going to end well? Who are you going to work for?
The other thing too is, I see like a lot of like resistance in people themselves on like wanting to be vulnerable, right? Or
It's scary.
yeah, of course it is.
Because everybody wants to be liked, right? Like it's scary because everybody wants to be vulnerable, right? Like, or everybody wants to be liked. If you're vulnerable and then somebody doesn't like you, that hurts. That sucks. So it's again, based in fear of if I'm vulnerable and they don't like me, then they're not going to like me and I'm going to be alone.
Yeah, the fear of judgment, right? But that's the thing though, is so how do you have those vulnerable conversations to people who are very highly like resistant to opening up or accepting like the thoughts that they're having or where they're at in life?
I think you just got to be you. Like you got to live your truth. If they want to open up, you can't force them to open up. You just can't. But if you are your true self, like if you truly are who you're meant to be, you are vulnerable and you aren't more or less vulnerable with them than anybody else. Maybe eventually they might. Not everybody's going to open up. It's just going to be a thing. Like there are people who just don't. I know of individuals that I have worked with in the past that they are just like, yep, it's just not my thing. And I was like, okay, cool. Does me being vulnerable bother you? And they said, nope, not at all. Just don't expect it from me. I go, that's fair. I don't expect that. I'm just going to continue to live in my truth. And we get along great.
I think the advice or the only thing you can really say is like in that moment is if you are, if you feel something or you feel an intuition or some sort of internal subconscious level where you're like, maybe I do feel like I want to have this conversation, you should follow it and have it, with no judgment of yourself and just let it be.
And sometimes that also can be based on the experiences of life. Maybe they will have wanted to do that, but previous experience will have told them that ends poorly. And so that they just go, you know what? I'm not going to do that. And so that's the way people have to battle those internal demons themselves.
This is my signature question. It's going to be the question that I ask every guest towards the end of the podcast. It's the topic that I've battled in my head often. It's the topic I have asked all my friends, maybe even family members, which is, what is happiness and what is your purpose? And yours is that you essentially just want to be nice and be kind to everybody and make one person smile. And I also heard a phrase or a quote that says, they say that your life's purpose is the thing that you didn't receive as a child, which is wildly accurate for most people and sometimes interesting. So, what are your thoughts on happiness, the purpose of life?
Mm. Well, like I told you, I can tell you what my purpose is. I talked about it before earlier on this podcast. My purpose is to wake up every day, make a positive impact in one person's life every day. A lot of times I can do that before I leave the house. Every other person after that is gravy, right on top of it all. That's my purpose. That's why I exist. I am not put on this earth to do Teams meetings and this, that, and the other. That's not why I'm put on this earth. I just happen to currently do data stuff. I happen to just do podcasts as well. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to what I just said, positive impact in at least one person's life every single day. Now, if I get a chance to live my purpose, do that thing more often than not, it generates happiness for me. It gives me the ability of feeling fulfilled, which for me generates some happiness. Now, I made a post yesterday, and probably a couple months from now, at the time of maybe this recording, that I talked about since Greg's passing, there's a melancholy in me. Billy Bob Thornton made a post that talked about how he has a melancholy in him since losing his brother. At any given time, I'm 50% happy and 50% sad. I think we have to understand that happiness doesn't necessarily mean it's on 100% of the time. It's just not, that's not realistic. That's not how life works. So what is happiness? Something that you feel fulfilled, you feel joy, you feel purpose, you feel a sense of self. Happiness can be so many different things. Maybe you get a dopamine hit from scratching off a lottery ticket and that makes you happy for that brief moment. Enjoy the bits and the bites of happiness, because again, it's not always going to be on. That's just not how life works. Find joy in some of the little things. Find joy in having the coffee with a friend, realizing you found $1 in your back pocket, puppies coming up to you on the street. Find happiness in moments, and you'll find that you can string together a whole bunch of moments, and that day was a pretty happy day. But if your expectations are going to be, I'm going to be happy all the time, you got to start setting realistic expectations that shoot for happy little moments, like Bob Ross used to say, happy little trees as many often as you can, and you'll string together some pretty interesting streaks of happiness for your life.
Yeah, I love it. What do you do when you're in those moments that aren't giving you happiness or aren't giving you fulfillment? Like, how do you like pull yourself back up out of the trenches, so to speak?
Sometimes when it's like super bad, like, boy, the day is just like the whole day just sucked. I will, a lot of times I've said this to family, I'll say, well, today won. Today beat me. Whatever the day was, like Thursday beat me. It looks like I'm going to have to try to win Friday. So sometimes I just chalk up, look, I lost the day. Didn't mean I lost the war. It just means I lost that day. I might still win the week. Hell, I might go on a winning streak after that, but that Thursday just whooped my ass. And so I'm going to let that day have its win, and I'm going to try to come back and win tomorrow. Sometimes you just have to chalk up to the fact that that's just the way it's going to be. If there are ways that you can pull yourself out, maybe again, cold plunge, go on a walk, have a puppy, like, whatever the answer is, and you can pull yourself out of that, try to do that. But then also know there could be a reality where the day just sucked. Embrace the suck, admit that it sucked, try to not have that same day tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I guess sometimes you do just got to accept it, and some days are a lot worse.
Some days are a lot worse.
Very true. It is what it is sometimes like a default, like for a lot of people, like, it is what it is, and sometimes I hate saying it, but then sometimes you're just like, it is what it is, as they say.
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be. But I think having the reality of recognizing, like, I took an L there. Yep. I took an L. I'm going to set that over here. But tomorrow, I'm not going to look at that same L. Tomorrow's a different day. That happened then. Tomorrow's new. I'm just going to go ahead and concentrate on the new thing and not the shitty old thing.
The tidbit there is that the focus isn't, and the shift is that it's in tomorrow, not in the present moment, which goes against a little advice of, be present, enjoy the moment. But sometimes there are moments that you have to have that self-awareness, or else that's not good, right? Like, a car accident, or you got injured, or, something like that. There's obviously much more extreme and catastrophic.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you should, I guess the be present thing, I get it. I understand it. That's really hard for me, especially. It's like a matter of, I'm always constantly planning ahead. I'm in the moment, but I'm also thinking 14 steps away. It's always something that I have to work on. It's like, but I think there has to be a realization that this moment blows. I'm going to put it over here and let it be the shitty thing that it is. And I'm going to go, you know what? I'm shutting it off, and I'm going to think that tomorrow's going to be better, and I'm just going to go to bed. Like, you're in the present of going to bed. You've accepted the fact that it's a loss, and you're optimistic for tomorrow to be better. You're putting yourself into a better mindset by accepting the fact that it sucked and that you're looking forward to the next day. Like, even if you don't say those words, that's effectively what you're telling your brain. And you're like, okay, yep, it sucked. I took an L. I'm gonna move on to the next thing. And so you're allowing your brain to compartmentalize the fact that today sucked and that tomorrow will be better.
It's kind of like, accepting it, right, and being like, okay, let's keep moving forward.
Yeah,
It's not like
just keep moving forward. Yep.
It's not the telltale sign of where I'm at, and it's also not worth what ifing it to death.
What if king right here? Always. I had it tattooed on me. What if king?
You said you have a tattoo of it?
I have no. I'm just messing. I don't have a tattoo of that.
I mean,
I have tattoos, but not of that.
All right, Scott, that wraps up this episode today. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story and your journey and your experiences. Where can listeners go to find more about you?
YouTube.com/technically speaking, if you want to check out anything that I had made from a consumer electronics perspective, or if you want to see what Greg was like, youtube.com/@data with Peachey. If you care about data, that's where you can find me. At Scott Peachey on Twitter, at the Scott Peachey on Instagram, probably a few other places.
Perfect. Listeners at home, if you have any guests or questions or comments, feel free to email me or DM me on my socials. Those will be in the show notes. And as always, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm very grateful and appreciate you. Thank you, Scott, for joining me here today.
Absolutely, brother. Anytime.